Matthew chapter 19 verse 27. Matthew chapter 19 verse 27. Peter answered him, "We have left everything to follow you. What then will there be for us?" Magandang umaga po. What have I to gain? Ano bang pwede kong pakinabangan sa bagay na yan? Kung tayo ay magkakasundo at merong gagawing isang bagay, what will I gain from doing it? From being part of it? People look after what will benefit them most. The economic and political system is dominated by people driven to sustain more gain. Return of investment, ika nga, is what matters most. Today, we see how our politicians prefer short-term political gain over long-term economic stability. Nakakalungkot lang, pero yun yung sistema at yun yung kalakaran sa ating lipunan sa ngayon. You will be surprised that the chapter started with the issue of divorce. Pharisees, Jewish law-keepers, asked Jesus about divorce. Jesus plainly answered by quoting what was stated in Genesis chapter 1 and 2. And Jesus clarified the sanctity of relationship of husband and wife. It is more important than any other reason for separation or divorce. As far as God is concerned, couple have made a sacred covenant and they should sustain this covenant even if at times things are not beneficial to each of them. For the family's sake, they stick. Actually, the question of the piracy is a question of what do I get out of an agreement? What if the relationship or agreement is no longer useful to me? Should I continue with it? In verse 27 of this chapter, Peter asked, "We have left everything. We've given up everything to follow you. What then will there be for us?" And it is a valid question. It was in the context that Jesus emphasized many of the wealthy is not worthy of God's kingdom. After he encountered the rich young man, it is as if Peter is telling Jesus, "We are not rich, but we have given up everything for you, for your cause. So what's in it for us?" Again, napaka-valid pong question ng isang taong naghahangad, no? O may malalim na paghahangad. We may be also thinking in the same way. What do I get from believing in Jesus? What gain do I receive in being a member of God's community? Is the promise life eternal for those who will receive and believe real? What about Matthew chapter 6 verse 33? "Lord, I have done this. I have sought you first. I have followed your will. What do I gain from seeking first your kingdom? Why am I not satisfied still?" Does God promise speak of material things? Let me say what I believe. Peter's question is not the same question many have. Peter's dilemma is that he is asking for something he doesn't know what. May hinahanap ako. Ano yun? Hindi ko nga alam eh. May gusto akong kainin. Ano yun? Hindi ko nga alam eh. Peter's question is the question of soul searching within. So Jesus explained, relationship with God, this is what you are longing for. Are we asking the same question or we are asking the wrong question? We seek God most of the time because of material gains. Yung mga tao, lalo na yung mga prosperity gospel believers, they have come to God, accepted God or Jesus, have been in this kind of relationship because they believe God will always provide, for their needs. May katotohanan naman yun. Kaya lang kalahating katotohanan lang. What if God have not provided for you? What if God have not healed you? Here in this chapter, Jesus has taken effort to elucidate significance of relationship. At ito yung nakikita kong mas importanteng dapat nating hinahangad. Itinatanong actually. Hinahalukat sa ating puso. Today we are challenged to desire God rather than what God is able to give. Sabi nga, desire the giver than the gift. As we celebrate GCCP and offer our gifts for the fellowship of the least coin, we must also reflect on the offering of the widow in Luke chapter 21 verses 1 to 4. Bakit ko ito sinasabi? Bakit ito kasama sa mensahe ngayon? Because this is one good example of longing for relationship. The widow is longing for relationship with God more than anything else. Longing for relationship rather than what we gain from having it. Yung ibibigay mo ang lahat gawa ng iyong pag-ibig. Gaya ng ginawa ng balo, ito ay patunay na mas mahalaga ang kaugnayan sa Diyos kaysa sa biyayang taglay. Na mahal mo ang Diyos, may ibigay man siya na biyaya o wala. Indeed, we come to God not because we are after material blessings, but the benediction of having covenant with God. It is to encounter God in good and bad conditions, in plenty and in sufficiency. To experience that joy in all circumstances. Connected with God, that we look forward for the fullness of life. Yun yung gusto natin sanang hinahangad. Jesus promised this in John 10:10. This is to happen. Actually, in faith with hope, the fullness of life will come, may pandemic man o wala, mararanasan may pandemic man o wala. Because what is the fullness of life all about? It is about living for others. It is the joy of sharing. Living in God's existence. It is when we have been freed, when we have freed ourselves from our own bandages of needs and wants, and greater is our involvement in the mutual longing and struggles of the people. Ito yung fullness of life, to experience that you are with God, that God is with us, and that we are with God's people. Sharing and discovering and trying to transform our condition. This is what actually Peter is asking about. He is looking for the fullness of life. A life in relationship with God and with God's people. Naunawaan yun ni Jesus, kaya nga sinabi niya sa bandang huli, unless you believe me, you're not going to be part of God's kingdom. Verse 29, read it. Read the whole chapter. Napakaganda po ng buong kabanatang ito. Yung soul-searching ni Peter, nasagot sa dakong huli ng Panginoon, sinabi, ang hinahanap mo talaga, gusto mong mangyari, this is what you really want to happen in your life, is to be connected with God, to have a relationship with God. Not material blessings, not self-righteousness, but grace-filled life. And like Peter, this is what we really long for. A life enabled by God. Apostle Paul confirmed this truth in his life. Naunawaan niya to nung tinanggap niyang Panginoon. At binitawan niyang lahat ng bagay. Apostle Paul considered everything he gained as nothing compared to what Jesus could give him. Compared to relationship with Jesus Christ, compared to being an apostle of Christ. Sabi niya, for to me to live is Christ and to die is gain. We long for a life enabled by God, not self-righteousness. No, gain is not the goal, actually. The benefit we long to understand and the advantage we long to experience is the power of God in us as we continue to forge God's will in our lives and in the lives of our society. Yung maunawaan mong sa proseso ng buhay, ay kasama mo ang Diyos. Ito talaga yung gusto mong itanong eh. Ito talaga yung hinahangad mo eh. What do I gain from this? It is the experience of being with God, being with God's people. Our ability to endure and follow God's will as we live in fellowship of God's people, seeking transformation as our reward. This is our gain. Kapag nakikita natin may nagbabago sa buhay natin at nagbabago ang ilang bagay sa ating lipunan, this is our gain. This is what we long for. Tayo bilang Kristiyano, inahamong muli. Hindi lang tayo naghahandog, o nagkakaloob, we're not just giving these gifts to God as we celebrate, lalo na yung fellowship of the least coin, no? Kasi we believe that we are part of God's kingdom. We long for this kind of relationship. We want this as a benefit sa buhay natin. This is what we gain. Muli, pagpalain po tayo ng Panginoon. God be with us. Amen.